The Dynamic Ideal. An article from Walker Atkinson out of the Nautilus Magazine. The power, energy, or force manifested in all the acts or deeds of men undoubtedly comes to man from a universal source, and in a way may be spoken of as raw power, that is, power which may be shaped or molded into this form or that, directed in this way or that, molded in this shape or that. This universal power is the raw material or energy which depends upon the ideas and ideals of man to determine its forms or manner of manifestation. In this way, it resembles the lesser forces of nature, as, for instance, steam or electricity, either of which, although one in general principle, nevertheless may be applied in manifold forms. In the case of the physical forms of energy just mentioned, the form, shape, and manner of manifestation is determined by the apparatus or machinery designed and built by the cunning mind of man. In the case of the great universal power of energy, mental in its last analysis, the form, manner, or shape of its manifestation depends upon the character of the mental machinery of the individual. No one would expect to obtain the benefit of steam or electricity without adequate machinery, carefully designed for the particular purpose intended. And although very few seem to realize it, man cannot hope to obtain the benefit of the universal power or energy unless he will first construct the appropriate and fit mental apparatus of machinery through and by which to apply it. This truth needs but to be stated to be realized, and yet the majority seem to have overlooked this important fact. In this and the following papers of this series, we shall examine the nature of this mental machinery or apparatus, and at the same time shall consider the best way to construct the same. The first step in the building of the mental machinery through and by means of which we hope to apply the universal energy is the practice of dynamic idealization. Without this foundation, all the rest of the work would prove useless. At the basis of all scientific use of the universal energy, we find that which we may call idealization. What is idealization? Let us see. By an ideal is meant a mental image, form, or representation of anything. To idealize a thing is to embody or represent it in an ideal form. By the term idealization, therefore, we mean the embodiment of our desires or aspirations in a distinct mental form. Very few persons know how to idealize dynamically. The majority content themselves with forming an indistinct idea or mental concept of that which they want to do or wish to possess, and then let it go at that. The trained practitioner of practical psychology, however, does not stop with this elementary step, but proceeds much further. By patient and persevering effort, he builds up in his mind, first in his conscious mind, and then in his subconscious mentality, a clear, distinct idea or concept of that which he desires to accomplish or possess. Then he rivets that idea or ideal firmly in his mind and thereafter is never parted from it. By well-known psychological laws, this fixed ideal causes the entire mental equipment of the individual to work in the direction of making that ideal become real. The mind unconsciously seizes upon every scrap of information or bit of knowledge which will work out in the direction of materializing and objectifying the fixed mental conception. Now, do not imagine for a moment that I am indulging in extravagant statements regarding the power of dynamic idealization. I am saying nothing but what conservative psychologists are saying in their lectures to their classes in the universities or writing in their college textbooks. One of the leading psychologists in our universities tells his students, "The Brooklyn Bridge first existed in the mind before the structure became an objective reality. The projectors had first to plan what they intended to do. Then they had to put these plans on paper in the form of drawings, the mind going before the pencil and telling the fingers where to put the next line. Only after the mental object was complete was matter slowly poured into this mental mold. Only then did that wonderful bridge, connecting two great cities, become a reality. The same is true of every step in material progress, from the invention of the sewing machine to that of the telephone. In the battle of life, those succeed best who can form definite ideas of what they are going to do before they start to do it. Others are prone to get into trouble and are often forced to retrace their steps. Practical psychologists of the newer school, the school which scientifically classifies much that is current in a general form in the new thought, teach that upon the strength and clearness of our ideals depend, to a great extent, our success in manifesting those ideals into reality. As a matter of fact, very few persons really have any ideals beyond a hazy, nebulous, shadowy sort of concept. To drop into slang, they scarcely know where they are at. Or like the man in the song, they don't know where they're going, but they're on the way. Well, friends, we need far more than this. We must know where we are at, and we must know something of where we're going, or we shall not get very far on the way. Aimless, purposeless wandering on the mental plane is as futile and unavailing as wandering on the physical plane. If we follow this plan, we are very apt to find in the end that we have been merely traveling round and round in a circle, like the squirrel in his wheel. Or like the stranger in the fabled streets of Boston, we find ourselves just where we started. This journeying round and round is poor business. We have got to do better than the two men on the road to Dublin. Ever hear the story? Well, the two men were journeying toward Dublin. They asked a passerby how far was Dublin. 6 miles, was the answer. Journeying along for 2 hours more, they met another man walking toward them. How far is it to Dublin? They asked for the second time. 6 miles, was the surprising answer. The two gazed sadly at each other, but trudged on uncomplainingly. 2 hours more passed, when a third pedestrian was encountered. Once more the question, how far is it to Dublin? 6 miles, shouted the man. This would have broken the spirit of the travelers had they not been born optimists. The first man said nothing, but his companion observed cheerfully, well, we're holding our own at any rate. But, while we may admire the optimism of the weary travelers, we must not be content with any such result. Holding our own is not good enough for us. We want more. Standing still is, in reality, going backward, for the procession is moving ahead even though we stand still, and if we would not be left in the rear, we must make progress. Several years ago, when I filled a position which brought me many visitors each day and many more letters in the same time, I was overburdened with requests for advice from persons who wished to succeed, to accomplish, to attain. But, as strange as the statement may seem to you, I can truthfully say that not 1%, not 1 in 100 of these earnest seekers was able to state exactly what he or she really wanted. They were dissatisfied and discontented, and felt the vague urge of unrest pushing them forward to further endeavor and attainment. But it stopped right there. 99 out of every 100 did not know what they wanted. They asked not only for advice regarding the means of accomplishment and attainment, but also for information as to what they should really desire. Silly, you exclaim. Not a bit of it. I venture to say to you, yes, you who are now reading these lines are not much better off regarding clear-cut ideas and ideals. You want and want and want, of course, but just what do you want? Have you a clearly defined idea and a clear-cut ideal of the object of your desire? Honor bright now, have you? It is just this lack of the clear and strong ideal that keeps the majority of us down in the rut. We feel instinctively that we are capable of better things, and that we could accomplish great things if we only had the chance. But how in the world can we expect ever to get a chance if we don't know what we wish to accomplish? Why, we wouldn't recognize the chance if we met it face to face, for we do not know what we wish to accomplish. We haven't the clear-cut ideal. We wait for something to turn up, but in the direction of what? I tell you, friends, if we know exactly where we are at, what we are after, we will have no trouble in recognizing the chance when it presents itself, nor the something which we are hoping will turn up. The man possessed, I had almost said obsessed, for sometimes it seems like it in strong characters, of a clear-cut concept of what he really wants, does not need to stand around waiting for something to turn up. He goes out and turns something up. He does not hang around waiting for opportunity to knock at his door. He chases up opportunity and knocks boldly at her door. He knows exactly what he wants, and goes after it, and he gets it. I have often said that a man can get almost anything he wants, if he only wants it hard enough. And I stick to the statement. But how in the world can he want a thing hard enough if he does not know exactly what the thing is he wants? And yet this is the attitude of thousands of seekers after success. Are you one of this kind? They say that faint heart never won fair lady. That's so, too. But what would you think of a man who expected to win his fair lady by reason of his courage, but who hadn't made up his mind which fair lady he wanted among all the thousands in the land? Such a man would never get his fair lady, would not recognize her if he met her. His only chance would be that some fair lady would have a clearer idea of what she wanted, and would capture him willy-nilly. The same thing is true of the other sex. How many girls lose all chance of a mate simply because they don't know their own minds, don't know what they want, until it is too late? Success in no line is ever accomplished by persons of weak ideas and hazy ideals. Many persons are like the donkey who was placed in a field, at an equal distance between two attractive haystacks. He starved to death because he could not decide which haystack he wanted. The man or woman who succeeds will be found to have a clear idea regarding what he or she really wants. Such a person builds these ideas into a clear-cut idea or ideal of what they want in perfect detail. But at any rate, one should at least form an idea of the general outline of what is wanted, then fill in the details from time to time as he moves on. A little change will be made at one point, and a little difference at another, but the main ideal stands intact from start to finish. One should find out exactly what one wants, and then move straight to the mark, refusing to be sidetracked or diverted from the ideal. If you can't get over an obstacle, burrow under it, or walk around it, but keep your goal ever in mind. Impress your ideal so firmly in your mind that you will never lose sight of it, awake or asleep. Asleep? Yes, for the subconscious works while you sleep and accomplishes much for you. Give your subconsciousness a proper pattern to work by, and it will do great things for you. But now you ask how to form a clear-cut ideal. The answer is simple. Find out that which your individual nature most strongly demands. Then submit the report to your reason and conscience. After having modified your demands by reason of the influence of these two most important factors, so that you have the unqualified okay of both reason and conscience, begin to think of the thing which has now attained a nebulous shape. Think of it from every conceivable viewpoint. See it from every possible angle. Then begin to think about the things most closely allied to it, the things concerning it, the things associated with it, the things leading up to it, the things resulting from it. Do these things, and you will find yourself in possession of quite a good stock of ideas concerning the thing. Then build up these ideas into an ideal, and animate that ideal by the fire of desire, so that it will stand for you as the one thing which will make life worth living for you. A friend of mine, of a somewhat peculiar brand of philosophy all his own, used to remind me that, according to his philosophy, all ideals are idols which persons bow down to and worship. Of course, this was all sophistry, but what of it? It might be a very good thing for some of us to erect an idol in the form of a worthy ideal, a high aspiration of the soul, and then burn incense at its shrine, bedeck its altar with flowers, and carry its image constantly in our mind. In the end, we would probably make the idol take on actual life and movement. And then, from its lips would come the words, "Fear not. You have not been worshipping a mere graven image. You have been worshipping the something within, which is also within you, and within everything else. My outward form served to help you to concentrate and manifest the ideal, but the spirit within me was there all the time awaiting the call to action. You have called into being the creative power of the universe, by whose might alone can anything be accomplished or attained. Like Brahma, in the Hindu fable, this spirit of creation might say, men worship sticks and stones, trees and mountains, sun, moon and stars. But if they worship truly, honestly, and with good works, their worship ascends to me, the Lord God, and I accept it as mine own. For it is ever me they seek, though their eyes be blinded by the illusion of material form. So do not be afraid of the idolatry of the ideal. A little more idolatry of this kind would be a mighty leaven of the race. So finally, from the building stones of your ideas, erect the edifice of your ideal, then move everything to make that ideal real. Accept no compromise nor substitute no gilded thing in place of the pure gold. Demand your own, your very own, and take nothing in its place. But, this first and last, be sure you know just what you want. Be sure you will recognize your ideal when you meet it face to face. Do these things, and you will have learned the secret of the dynamic ideal. End of article.